ministry, though I don't see one. I think Tisang will help us with them as soon as I give him to provide us with apologies. Honorable members, you all welcome, staff and everybody. Thank you. Tisang, can you assist us with the apologies?
Good morning, Chairperson and honorable members. The apologies I've received is from Mr. Kwankwa, who won't be able to attend the meeting today. The one apology I've also received from the minister's office is that the minister is in a SCOA meeting, but will also be attending cabinet, including the deputy minister will also not be able to join us. The delegation of the Department of Public Enterprises is led by the acting director general, Ms. J.K. Mutisani, who is present in the meeting. She will be the one leading the department, Chairperson. Thank you.
Honorable members, we have no time. We have just to go straight to the Department of Public Enterprise to brief us on the midterm performance report of the department and the state-owned companies. Acting DG, can you take us through?
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, honorable members and the colleagues on the platform this morning. I am indeed going to take you through the presentation, and can I please ask Disang just to share the presentation to flight it if on your side, if you can, without further ado.
Okay, Ms. Mutisani, I've made you a co-host, so you should be able to do that quickly.
On my side, it just keeps on circling. It's not allowing me to share because of a number of documents that we have here. Can you assist us with that? Or because I don't want to shut out of the current system, if you can.
I'm gonna try.
Apologies for that.
I'm gonna try.
Apologies, honorable members, for this. It's not loading. Oh my goodness. Perfect. Thank you very much, Disang, and apologies once again to the honorable members. Just to take you through the department's mid-year performance report. The areas that I'm going to cover, it is just the overview, the mid-year performance and the measures to improve non-performance of the targets that we've set for ourselves as a department, and the performance per program, the budget and the expenditure, as well as the performance of the SOCs. Chair, without going into too much detail, we are presenting the departmental 2023 annual performance plan to highlight the strategic areas that the department is focusing on the current financial year, as well as the SOCs within the DPE portfolio. Just in terms of the departmental annual performance plan mid-year performance, this was recorded at 70%, and the department had 33 targets, out of those 33 targets, only 23 were achieved. And the mid-year performance, Chair and the colleagues, it shows that we are making some progress towards achieving some of the MTSF and the Economic Reconstruction Recovery Plan as articulated in the EPP. And the response plans were mainly implemented to ensure that the department continues to provide the strategic and direction to the operational as well as the financial challenges that are currently facing the SOCs. The other area, it is to look at governance and accountability that continues to be prioritized in order to enhance both the operational and financial performance of our SOCs. And we also want to ensure that we discharge both our financial and human resources to make sure that the priorities within which the department is seized with continue to be effectively discharged. Just to take the colleagues through, as I've indicated, on slide 6 of the presentation, that compared, we are at 70% in terms of our annual performance plan. And just to take the Tisang, can you just probably go to slide 7 so that we can be on the same page with the members of the committee? In terms of the measures to improve the non-achievement of targets, the first targets, which is basically to have 90% of the ICT structure filled, the program, this particular program, which is the administrative program, it has made satisfactory progress with about 70% of the posts that have been filled, and the capacity was further augmented by internal appointments and outsourcing external expertise in this regard. It is expected that there will be further improvements before the financial year end. We are engaging with some other resources that we have identified to assist us in this particular area, because even the AG did indicate that we need to get a GTO in this particular area. So we are working to make sure that when this financial year ends, the ICT structure is filled and we are complying, and we can tick the box in terms of the AG as well. In terms of the 50% cooperation agreement milestone to deal with the infrastructure vandalism and theft, which is one of the key areas that we are seized with, and I need to indicate to this committee that the department is playing a very key role in terms of the infrastructure and vandalism theft, which is coordinated at the highest level in the presidency, being led by the DG in the presidency, whereby all relevant departments, including the law enforcement agencies, are part of this particular committee to ensure that we begin to look at this issue that is plaguing the infrastructure vandalism and theft. In that regard, there has been significant work that has been done, as I've indicated, in terms of dealing with this, and we are providing regular reports to the presidency to make sure that vandalism and theft is being addressed, because it's having an adverse impact on the economy due to, for example, the vandalism of transformers, be it the vandalism or theft of the rail tracks, etc. So this is an issue that we thought it is actually very prudent to elevate and put it in our APP for us to make sure that we don't lose sight thereof. In the area of the draft proposal on the establishment of the restructuring unit, I need to indicate that We are developing a business case to support the presidential SOC work in terms of restructuring the SOCs with the aim of stabilizing them. But I need to indicate that this is still at an inception stage, and the finalization of the business case is being deferred to the next financial year, as we need to ensure that there's consultation processes that needs to be undertaken with the relevant stakeholders. Because in some of these ailing SOCs, we've got to engage, for example, with the policy departments. We also need to engage with the likes of Treasury, the regulators, etc. So this stakeholder consultation process is currently underway. And in terms of our timeframes, we are currently working on it. Basically, we have identified some of the ailing SOCs that needs urgent attention. And with the restructuring unit, the whole idea of also putting it here is that we have seen from the previous experience that when you are restructuring an entity, it consumes a lot of time and effort, and it needs dedicated resources that will make sure that this entity is being monitored and supervised up until it gets out of this ailing position. So that is the reason why we thought it is important to begin to have a much more focal unit that will actually start looking at stabilizing some of these ailing SOCs, because they're also begin to be a drain on the fiscus. In terms of the other targets that we are working on, it's the developing and testing of the local content verification that is done by the South African Bureau of Standards, whereby we are developing and testing local content verification, and the evaluation framework in this regard is underway and will be finalized. It is important that in terms of the SOCs that we are overseeing, we begin to have empirical evidence to verify the local content around this, and it really needs warm bodies to go and verify and authenticate the local content that is in these entities when they actually undertake this particular work. In terms of the 23-24 shareholder compacts, I need to indicate to the committee that the negotiations are underway, with internal consultations expected to be concluded, and the agreement with the SOC is due to be finalized in the next quarter. I just need to indicate that currently one of the shareholder compacts that we are currently negotiating, it is that of Transnet, for example, to make sure that some KPAs and KPIs are being included in that regard. As we have indicated that this is a negotiation process, it's not like a top-down process. So we are working with the respective SOCs to make sure that the KPIs and KPAs that we require for us to exercise our oversight and to hold these SOCs accountable, they are in fact in the shareholder compacts, and they also correspond to the corporate plan that they have submitted to the department. The other area that we are monitoring is around the implementation to increase the energy availability factor to above 70% by 22-23 financial year. As we know, currently with regard to Eskom, the EAF is way below the EAF. And as per the Minister of Public Enterprises, when he appointed the board, he was quite explicit to indicate that the new board should be seized with ensuring that Eskom increases the energy availability factor to 70%, because currently it is hovering around the 50-59. So they've got quite a task ahead of them to increase it. The reason for the generation plant's performance continued to decline due to the high energy utilization factor of the coal fleet, the quality of the coal that has been supplied to some of our power stations have not been to the standard that is required. And also, given the fact that there has been some challenges around some coal, not the good quality coal being used to be exported in the export market, given the fact that the price per ton for the coal has been very high, and people would rather export this coal as opposed to supply it to Eskom. So these are some of the challenges that we're having, notwithstanding the other challenges that the availability and the reliability of these commissioned units did not perform accordingly due to the design defects and the operational inefficiencies. And these are really being closely monitored, especially in the new power plants. As the colleagues might be aware, with especially the new power plants like Medupi and Kusile. So corrective plans around the design defects are being monitored to ensure that these defects are being addressed to. So in terms of the action plan, we continue to implement the generation recovery plan to improve plant performance. One of the key challenges is obviously around Kusile, that we have to make sure that, especially given the fact that it's also one of the new plants, and what has happened to Medupi, to make sure that we really increase the reliability of these new power plants. Because the plan was that if in the event that there were no defects around these new power plants, and there was a stable energy of supply being provided by these power plants, then probably would be having a much higher EAF. The other area that we continue to monitor is around the private sector participation in the ports and freight rail, on 13 transactions, where the department has identified transactions that Transnet will be undertaking to complete in the 22-23 financial year. And we want to continue to monitor these various engagements to ensure that private sector capabilities are secured to complement the rail and terminal operations. As the colleagues are probably aware that in the last few weeks, there has been challenges around the derailment in the KZN area, and the department and Transnet in the past few weeks actually worked very hard to make sure that the derailment that actually happened in the KZN area, it was addressed, to make sure that we begin to stabilize the operations in this particular area. So we are working closely with Transnet to really improve and make sure that capabilities to complement and ensure that there is much more efficient operations at the ports and on the freight rail side. Just going through the performance per program, we'll quickly go through that. Under administration, Chair, with your indulgence, can probably focus on those that we were not able to achieve. The one that we're not able to achieve, it was the implementation of the signed cooperation agreement to reduce SOC infrastructure vandalism through signing of the cooperation with the stakeholders, because we needed to really engage, but catch-up plans are in place to improve this particular aspect in terms of the particular SOCs that are dealing with this one. And the other one, it was the percentage on media public perception surveyed, it was also not achieved. And like I indicated, around the ICT structure with new capabilities that we're not able to achieve. However, the filling of the vacant position is underway, and we've identified external resources to help us address the issue of the ICT vacancy in terms of that target, especially given now that we are working in an ICT environment. So it is important that we augment the capability and capacity in the department to make sure that when the AG, like I've indicated, that in terms of this particular performance indicator, we do achieve it going forward. We have already identified a person to come and assist, and we're just waiting for the paperwork and probably the necessary letters of acceptance to make sure that the filling of this vacancy is done within this particular financial year. On the areas on governance, legal assurance, and risk profiling, those have been achieved, Chair. So I'm not going to go through those ones. The ones that I probably want to focus on, it is the areas of non-achievement. The sub-program 3 around the financial assessment and investment support, like I indicated on that one, the number of SOCs, business plan developed, and the restructuring plan to be established. I indicated that, as I indicated earlier, that we are still developing the business case to support the work of the PSEC in terms of restructuring these SOCs, and this work will be deferred to the financial year because we'll be consulting with the external people to ensure that this process gets the buy-in of the relative key strategic stakeholders to ensure that this restructuring becomes successful. Because if you don't get the buy-in, then it will be almost like a half-baked solution. So we have to do it properly, and it must be a holistic approach. In terms of sub-program 3 around business enhancement, Disang, it's on slide 13. The area that we have not achieved is around the local content verification development, and in this one, the measures are in place to recover in the next quarter. Like I indicated that with the SOCs, they do indicate, for example, with the kind of project that they'll be undertaking, the level of local content that will be there. So we need to have empirical evidence to support the local content verification, as opposed to just taking it at face value, and make sure that this information that we get from our SOCs is verified, it's factual, and it's evidence-based. Going to the next slide, on the energy and the resources side, Chair, the energy and resources side, it looks at the 3 programs, which is mainly ESCOM, SAFCOL, and ELEXCO. The area that we have not achieved, it is around the Science Shareholder Compact, which has not been achieved, and the consultation on the 23-24 financial year, they're still underway. We are still engaging on the ESCOM Shareholder Compact, because I am sure, given what is currently happening in the ESCOM environment, we just need some more clarity, and so that we can compact accordingly. around especially the operational targets, the KPAs and the KPIs. So that negotiation is still underway, and that is why it is not being achieved. But we want to make sure that these are finalized and achieved in the next quarter, and we can bed this one down. Around the EAF, I think I've spoken at length around this previously, increasing the energy availability factor. As I indicated, that we are looking at the EAF of around 70%. But we, as the department, we need to make sure that we monitor the implementation of the design defects and the correction plan, especially around the new builds associated with the Medupi and Kusile power plants, and continue to implement the generation recovery plan to improve plant performance, and also monitoring Eskom mitigation plans to identify risks as to the energy availability factor not being achieved, because this is having an adverse impact on the economy. We have seen the effects thereof with the different stages that we have seen in the last few days. But fortunately, as we speak today, we have managed to come back to higher levels of to stage 2. So we are monitoring this quite closely. And around the issue of increase reserve margin by 15% by 2024, this was not achieved. And this again, it relates to the defects in the plant performance that the department is continuing to look at. Looking at the transport and defense portfolio, which is program 3. This one is looking at the entities, namely Transnet and Denel. The one area that we have not been able to achieve, but the rest have been achieved, is the progress analysis on the achievement on the 3 PSPs identified for the conclusion by Transnet within specific strategic segments. The department has identified, in terms of the actions, has identified the transaction initiatives that Transnet will complete in this financial year, and continue to monitor the various segments to make sure that the private sector capabilities to complement the rail and the terminal operations are secured in this particular financial year. That work is underway, but for this particular mid-year, it was not achieved, but we intending that when the financial year closes, we would then have achieved this particular performance indicator, but the rest have been achieved. Chair, I will go through the mid-year financial performance of the department. And in terms of the financial overview of the department, as at September 2022, this amounted to 5.9 billion against the projected spending of 21.9 billion. The spending was lower than projected by 16 billion, or about 73%. This is a result of vacancies within the department and the payment of financial transfers and goods and services. The spending, it was mainly been coming from program 3. The payments for financial assets, as the department did not transfer funds to Eskom as projected, as Eskom was able to mobilize its own generated revenue to settle some of the guaranteed debt for the period under review. So that is the real reason for the underspending for the mid-year. But given what has been happening now, we just have to see by the end of this financial year, we want to make sure that this low spending is actually being remedied. Of the 26.7 billion allocated to the SOCs, regarding the guaranteed debt, whereby they've got to be paying. Only 4% has been disbursed to Eskom to be able to pay their capital and interest, and the 1.6 billion has been allocated to SAA, and the 201 million has been made available to pay Denel. And the total spending, excluding the payments of financial assets or transfer made to SOCs, has been 68.3%. So what one can actually indicate is that the spending transfers and the subsidies is more than the projection, which is really over 2,000%, which is mainly due to leave gratuities. And this spending item is the reason why it is so high is because of the unpredictability, because it occurs when an employee resigns from the department. So that is why this amount is quite significant. In terms of the payments on the financial or the transfers to the SOCs, I've already indicated that it mainly went through to the big entities, SAA, Denel, where we actually had to pay some of the money. And with respect to Denel, that money, it was also transferred as a direct charge against the National Revenue Fund, which was actually paid to the entity. So this is where we are at. In terms of the adjusted estimate of national expenditure, during the AE&E process, the department budget was increased by 3.1 billion, which consists of 2.9 billion for the repair and replacement of Transnet assets that were damaged in the KZN as a result of floods, and also for the Denel guaranteed debts. As this committee is aware that sometime in June, we're all aware of what happened in KZN with the issue of floods that adversely affected Transnet and also in its operations, and therefore they successfully were able to get money from Treasury to be allocated to them to address this particular issue. Coming to the area of the unauthorized expenditure in the department, I need to probably remind the committee here that we reported in the previous department's financials that there was an authorized expenditure of 15 million. Just to give some context to this particular irregular expenditure, it related to the payment that the department made to Denel. The committee will recall that a court order was issued against Denel before they got the money, that some of their assets need to be auctioned off. And as a result, it was going to be a fire sale. And the department thought it was prudent because if those assets were going to be sold off, they were going to be sold at a much lower value, which was going to be a distraction of value. And the department intervened in that regard and transferred some money to Denel in order to avert the auctioning of those assets. So that was the unauthorized expenditure that we incurred prior to making sure that all the approvals were there. I just need to indicate that this was so time sensitive because the order of court was already granted. So we wanted just really to be proactive and make sure that these assets are just not auctioned. So this resulted in the irregular expenditure. But I am also pleased to indicate that As a result, this unauthorized expenditure, it's now zero. It has balanced in our books because as a result of the now being able to get some of the money from the defined medical benefit, whereby plus minus 900 million was secured to be able to pay legacy debts, including even this particular amount, 15 billion we did receive from Denel. So as a result, we have been paid back, and this money has been surrendered to the National Revenue Fund. So from the unauthorized expenditure perspective, this amount nets off quite nicely. On the other irregular expenditure that occurred in the prior year, it pertains to the 32 million contract, which occurred due to the material deficiency of the appointment of a service provider, whereby the department has assessed and taken corrective action in this regard. And we've brought a self-review application to have the appointment of the service provider to be reviewed and to be set aside by a court of law. So this process is underway, so it's still reflecting. So this matter is still within the courts, and we will know about it as soon as the courts have actually pronounced on this particular one. And the amount of 972,000, it relates to the extension of a contract without approval. The investigations have been completed, and we're waiting approval for corrective measures to be taken for the condonation to be submitted to National Treasury. And the other irregular expenditure is on 3.6 million for non-compliance, not adhering to the supply chain prescripts. And this matter, it was under investigation. And I need to report to the committee that we have received the preliminary report of this investigation, and we are going to be instituting corrective measures in this regard. So this area is also getting the necessary attention, and we would want to have this irregular expenditure being off our books as soon as possible, preferably before the financial year end, and see finality in this area. The other last fruitless and wasteful expenditure, it pertains to the 4,860 that the department incurred for booking of a venue and cancelling and not cancelling on time. The investigation was carried out, and we are currently making sure that we follow with the corrective action in this regard. So we will appraise the committee at financial year end to deal with this particular issue. I just need to probably indicate to the committee that the issue of irregular expenditure is very paramount, and we are working very closely with the department and also the SMSs to make sure that the issue of irregular expenditure becomes one of the performance issues that we're going to include when we assess our managers, because the whole idea is to reduce the issue of irregular expenditure. I'm just going to go through the SOC midterm results. I will start with the first entity, which is Denel. That I need to indicate that with Denel, with the AFS, the auditors are currently looking to be auditing Denel, and because in the previous years, they were not able to audit this entity. And now that there will be money that has been allocated from the Minister of Finance in this regard, we want the AFSs to be finalized, to commence, so that this entity can have audited financial statements. And the reason why we're not having those financial statements being audited, it was obviously because of the liquidity challenges that this entity was facing. And the proceeds from the unwinding of the DMPT, the Denel Medical Fund, assisted in relieving the liquidity pressures, which helped to deal with the legacy debt obligations, including paying of salaries, which was an issue that this committee is probably aware of, that Denel in the past, it was not able to pay even the salaries of the employees that they had. And as a result, they lost quite a lot of skilled people. But now with the money that has been allocated by Treasury, it sends a very positive signal to show that we are back in business. And now they can be in a position to recruit and get those people in, because it's relieving those liquidity pressures. And I just need to bring to this committee that the amount for the 21-22 financial year relating to the guaranteed debt, it was settled. This amount, it was 204 million. One of the key initiatives as well that Denel has undertaken, and it was part of the reasons why they were able to even secure the funding from National Treasury, is that they have developed a restructuring plan in order to improve the solvency of the entity, so that Denel becomes more viable. So in terms of this restructuring plan, I think it was presented to this committee. It was taken to the board. We looked at it, assessed, analyzed it. We were happy with it. It was presented to National Treasury. Hence, this is one of the outcomes of Denel being able to get money from National Treasury, because now they've got a credible plan that now needs to be executed to ensure that the Denel actually improves and becomes a viable SOC going forward. And this also talks to the reason why the Minister of Finance has allocated the 3.4 billion rands to Denel to implement its turnaround plan. And also one of the conditions, because there's no way that it's not going to be given just for the sake of it, but there are conditions associated with this money being allocated to them. One being is that they need to ensure that they dispose of non-core assets in terms of this, and also they must ensure that they get to implement the turnaround plan and ensure that now they get the people to execute even on the order book that they have now secured, which is quite impressive with the work that the Denel executive and board has done to make sure that their order book now is in the region of about 12 billion that they need to execute. So this will actually go a long way in making sure that Denel does not become a drain in the fiscals going forward. We will continue to monitor these conditions and the implementation of the turnaround plan to make sure that there's accountability in terms of this turnaround plan, and we'll continue to support them. And I just need to indicate that the implementation of this turnaround plan, it is already being implemented. It has commenced. with the reduction of fixed costs being undertaken in the business. And they are currently recapacitating the executive management, and the board will be ensuring that this plan is effectively implemented, because we don't want to make this entity to continue to be a drain. So it's one of the restructuring and the entities that we'll be looking quite closely at, to make sure that the implementation of this particular plan is measured according to the agreed milestones and the conditions that have been agreed to between DPE and the National Treasury. Coming to the entity, Elexco, the 2021 financial year audit is still outstanding. I just need to also indicate that Elexco is very solvent, and it does not have any interest-bearing debt. The revenue, however, for the past 3 years, it has been very stagnant due to the low diamond production. And the capital investment will be required to bring operations to sustainable levels to prevent further deterioration in the mining assets. And I just probably need to indicate that part of they have also, made an application of about 88 million rand funding application to finance the capital investment required. We are also monitoring this particular entity to make sure that it is not drained, or the debt, it does not become too heavy on it and it becomes solvent. So we are actually monitoring that, and we are also making sure that we identify and implement viable projects that will ensure that it brings revenue to the entity and it becomes profitable. And in the event that, as I indicated, that they don't have any interest-bearing debt, in the event that they probably wanted to go into the market, they'll be, and even be able to secure money if possible, they'll be able to service it without coming back to the fiscus. So it is important to ensure that these projects are viable and they're executed properly. There has been delays with the handover of the township to the economy and to the township, to the community and the local government in this particular area. We are working on this with Elexco and the local government of the Northern Cape in this regard. The entity, Eskom, I need to indicate that the audit is currently underway for 2021-2022. They probably did see yesterday there was an announcement on SENS indicating that probably there will be a slight delay with the there will be a slight delay with the AGM and the finalization of this entity. We are working very closely with Eskom and the colleague to make sure that this matter is getting the necessary attention. So they did indicate that it's going to be delayed. So we just have to see how this progresses. They are now actually saying it's going to be in December where the audit will be finalized. Revenue over the past years have been increasing as a result of the tariffs that have been approved by NERSA. And as we all know, Eskom has not been profitable since 2019, recording losses driven by the operating costs. We have seen that in the past, the operating costs have actually gone high. For example, we've seen even with them using or exceeded their budget around the usage of the OCG plants. So the costs are beginning to increase quite high, and as a result, it is not the revenue is not adequate to cover those operating costs. And government, as a shareholder, has provided equity support to ensure that Eskom meets the debt obligations. And to date, fortunately, they have not defaulted on any of their debt obligations, because we continue to monitor those. And in terms of the government equity support that has been extended to Eskom over the years, for 1920, it has been 49 billion. For 2021, 56 billion, and 21-22 has been 32 billion. And 22-23, it has been 21.9 billion. And the other 4 billion will be dispersed. The debt levels, I need to indicate that they're very much unsustainable, because there's big bullet amounts that they need to be paid, and this is just not sustainable. And the cash from operations is very much insufficient to meet the obligations. And the Minister of Finance, fortunately, he did make a pronouncement that they will be taking over some of the Eskom debt that will be transferred to the sovereign balance sheet between 1/3 and 2/3, and the details of that will be, and the mechanisms of the debt relief will be announced in the February 2023 budget. And this will go a long way in assisting this entity to now being on a firm footing and not be straddled with high debt levels. So this is a very good signal, and we've seen as a result, there's been a good uplift. In terms of the challenges, they are there around the operational issues and the financial issues that are facing the entity, around the aging and the unreliable power stations that are impacting negatively on the security of electricity supply, the poor maintenance, the operational performance, and latent defects, like I've indicated, especially in the new build, Medupi Kusile, the operational performance in the old power stations, the Tutukas and the likes. And that is why, in terms of the national energy crisis, there are those 6 power stations that have been identified that are going to be prioritized to make sure that we begin to focus mainly on them and make sure that they deal with the operational performance. And the other challenge that this SOC is facing is the inability to collect outstanding municipal debt, which has been increasing. This is a big issue in terms of municipalities not being able to pay Eskom their money, and as a result, this is having an adverse effect and challenging for Eskom to be sustainable. We are working closely to just try and see that can the active partnering model, whereby Eskom engages and make sure that probably we introduce the prepaid metering so that people pay upfront, so that this money can be received and it does not become a challenge, because many of these municipalities are owing Eskom a lot of money in this regard. Coming to the one entity, which is SAFCO, I need to indicate that this is one of the best entities within the portfolio of DPE. It received an unqualified audit opinion in the 2021-2022 financial year, and it delivered, it declared a dividend of 1 million at the AGM, and it achieved 86% of its shareholder compact targets for the 2021 financial year. We continue to want to put stretch targets in terms of this particular entity, and the revenue has been increasing over the last 3 years. The entity is very much solvent. It is not experiencing any liquidity challenges. It's able to source funds from the markets without any government support whatsoever. And there has been the one area that we need as a department, we are paying close attention to, is the timber dollar reinvestment project, which is critical for the 50-50 strategy to ensure that the project is being implemented. And this is one of the projects that will actually even enhance the targets that we'll be putting forward for this particular entity. I need to indicate that 57% of the land in Safcol is under the land claims, and the Department of Agriculture, Land Reforms and Rural Development is responsible for settling the land claims, and the delays are affecting Safcol's relationship with the neighboring communities. This is an area that we, as the department and their colleagues, the team that is looking after Safcol, they are working to make sure that this issue is being resolved. Coming to Transnet, one of the entities, the network entities, I need to indicate that Transnet has commenced with the implementation of the growth and renewal strategy, which is significant for the business in terms of sustainability, competitiveness, new capacity development, and ensuring that more supply chain segments are orientated towards the business. And in terms of Transnet, the capital is required in the rail and the port infrastructure, especially around the refurbishment and the maintenance divisions, the TFR, to support the key commodity segments. And the capital investment plan is very much reliant on the cash flow from operations and the partnerships, including those ones that we want as well from the private sector, given that even the balance sheet, it's also beginning to take a bit of a strain, because it was, as you all recall, this entity, it was COVID, it was the KZN floods, there's just been a number of challenges there, and obviously it has had an impact. The capital investment through its own balance sheet approximately is about 98.9 billion over the next 5 years, and they really need to attract private sector participation with Transnet's own resources and skills to ensure that there is overall competitiveness and capacity development, especially around the priority bulk commodities and the industrial sector, to enable growth and development. We have seen that there's been quite a lot of demand, especially for the bulk commodities. So, a lot of capital investment is required in that area. And Transnet to date has made significant progress in the development and the implementation of these initiatives by bringing private sector on board, and also making sure that we get private sector funding, because clearly Transnet cannot do all these things by themselves, especially around the DC22, the LNG in Richards Bay, the Boegoebaai port development, and the disposal of wagons and the third-party exits, and in terms of the TFR slot sales. So I just probably need to indicate that as I've indicated earlier, the support that has been given to Transnet, it was allocated 2.9 billion for the infrastructure damaged by rain in KZN, and the 2.9 billion for the purchase of locomotives, because with the demand and the commodities, it is important that they purchase additional locomotives in this regard. So this is what it speaks to. And then just talking to the issues of the Special Investigation Unit Progress Report, the SIU gave SAA a confidential high-level report, and it was mandated to investigate the affairs of the SAA, and a total of 23 contracts were identified for investigations. And the key focus of investigation were around the procurement and contracting of aircraft disposals, the maladministration in the affairs of SAA regarding the travel rebate benefits for qualifying beneficiaries, the payment that the SAA made to the vendors, the implementation of the SAA procurement policy, and the irregular and improper and unlawful conduct by officials and employees of SAA or any other entity. So this is what has been happening there. And as I've indicated, that the audit for SAA has commenced. They are working at SAA currently, and they're expected to be completed in the next quarter. And we are waiting progress in that regard, the outcome of the audit in that regard. And in terms of operational update, it's very important to indicate that SAA is they've scheduled flights activity as of the 23rd of September. They are flying in 8 destinations: Cape Town, Durban, Accra, Harare, Kinshasa, Lusaka, Lagos, and Mauritius. And also the income statement performance is ahead of budget. We have seen in the last few months that the load factor has been high, and the prices of tickets has been quite high. So they have actually managed to get themselves to perform ahead of budget. And the regional domestic flights, they've also increased, and they're planning to expand by flying to more destinations and frequencies. Then they're looking at the different routes that are going to be profitable, and making sure that SAA, as it emerges even out of this process that we're currently seized with, it becomes less of a burden. And once the SCP is on board, it can be less reliant on the state. In terms of the next steps in concluding the SCP process, I need to indicate that we are at the critical steps to complete the disposal of the SAA SCP process. Currently, it's to ensure we are going to ensure that the implementation of the business plan it is being implemented, and the Competition Commission is currently doing its work as an independent body. We just have to await the decision that they will make. We are engaging with them, we are cooperating with them, we are responding to any questions that they are asking the department, and we are responding accordingly in terms of what they posted to the department. And once this the regulatory issues have been addressed, then the SCP process can come on board. So I need to indicate that as soon as all these regulatory processes have been finalized, then the SCP can come on board. And the SCP cannot come on board until all these regulatory approvals are secured. And as a department, would want to have this transaction completed sooner rather than later, so that this entity can, play its role in terms of in the aviation sector. I just want to leave it at that and thank the chair and the members, and I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting DG. Honorable members, that is the presentation from the department that has been presented by the Acting DG. I was just checking if there is no minister yet. Maybe we might have come while you're still presenting, seemingly not. Honorable members, I'm seeing hand, though I'm not working with hand normally, but perhaps it's a point of exigency. Honorable Shabalala.
Thank you so much, Chairperson. Good morning. I just wanted to say, please note me to be the first person because I'm also trying to get myself ready for the house sitting. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable members, that is the presentation. We will go through all the names without wasting time. Let me take the Honorable Chabalala, as she has already indicated.
Thank you so much, Chair, and good. Is it still morning to everybody in the meeting? The department, I also didn't see any executives, so I hope I'm not leaving anybody because I didn't see any executive member here. Chair, today it's our house sitting and we've got questions to our cluster and we have questions. So I hope that Honorable Kachali and Isaac will get it on a lighter note. Chair, let me thank Ms. Jackie for her presentation. But you could hear, Ms. Jackie, you are in pains. You are in pains to explain these things, and understandably so. It's unfortunate because you are reporting on other people's and SOCs, their participation, if not their performance. It is painful to hear. Even you going further and further. In fact, I was asking myself, like, is it already 11:10? Primarily because this is the department. I don't know whether it has capacity or it doesn't have capacity to really, one, instill the culture and the change that we need in these SOCs and in how SOEs and how they need to be responsive to what they are meant to be doing. The transformation agenda, it is very clear. We want transformation here. And secondly, we have always been claiming from the African National Congress that the matter of privatization has never been our motto. But the way we are going on in this SOEs and us being here is really painful because this is not what we are for. And this is what we are advocating for. Because all we advocate is that the SOE should be serving as a transformative agenda to enable the industry themselves to flourish and nourish, but to also ensure that our economy thrives within these SOEs. But the issue of also employment and transformation, and this is not happening across the board. Let me leave the lamentation, but I just wanted to say to you, Shame, I feel for you, but you're in pains today, understandably so. I want to understand that the shareholder management bill, isn't it what doing your performance as a department? We've been saying this thing since we started. And you've given us the deadline of March 2023. The question becomes, are you going to even meet that March 2023 in terms of the shareholder management bill? Secondly, department addressing the concerns raised by the AGSA. And we want to know the 6th administration is almost coming to an end. Therefore, further delays in finalizing this bill, submitting it to Parliament or further processing may result in the bill not being finalized during the current administration. So I think the question was in relation to that. The committee should get a report on the Alex Coast 21-22 audited financial statements. and the external auditors, has the external auditor been approved, Mejeki? And when will this entity be able to submit its 21-22 a financial statement, as much as you would have explained? But I also want to know the issue of the board of ALESCO. Are we going to keep the board chairperson, they're over 70-year-olds, until when? When is this board time frame coming to an end? We need young people to come into the space, please, Mejeki. So if you can explain that. The ESCOM, it is a big issue. We cannot behave and almost as if we don't see what is happening. Our economy is crumbling because of this ESCOM and load shedding. And the load shedding since the 1st of January 2022, there's been 155 days of load shedding with 51 days of load retainment for the financial year 22-23. The March 11, November 22, there has been a total of 141 days of load shedding within 44 days of load containment. In general, really, you've been telling us the conditions that has led to the situation has been shortage of generation, increased unplanned unavailability, limited fuel availability of peaking stations, the need to all these reasons that you are giving. We want a solution. I think for me, Chairperson, I want to also say to the committee, we've reached an element or a level where we can never be continuously talking about the state capture and so forth and so on. We want solution. The department should tell us what is it going to do and how is it going to do it and when it's going to do it to ensure that the ESCOM issue becomes a sustainable matter. The meters that Ms. Jake is talking about, that there are meters, yes, in communities, we can agree to that and so forth, the culture of payment and so forth and so on. But really, the ESCOM issue cannot go on this way. I want to understand the level of this, the roadmap that you gave us of ESCOM, the division and transmission and generation and so forth. How far are you with it, Ms. Jackie, if you can really explain to us? Just the last question, I'm still on the ESCOM issue. You spoke about DPE being allocated budget of 23.9 billion for 22-23 financial year. And ESCOM has been allocated 21.9 billion. So let's do the math. And this amount is due to, disbursed to ESCOM during the first quarter of the financial year. Entity was unable to settle the debt from East Generation Avenue. So ESCOM has been requesting this additional capacity between 4,000 megawatts and 6,000 megawatts for the past 4 years. And I want to understand, can you really tell us this legal separation of ESCOM, how you're going to sustain the issue of the debt that we have? MTBPS spoke about next year, February, and what are the prospects between now and then? The issue of Tshwane, the colleagues, people of Tshwane are suffering, Ms. Jackie, in what you call Attridgeville. They've been without electricity for many, many years. How are we going to assist them? Do we even have plans? Can somebody from ESCOM in this meeting explain to me, the people of Attridgeville, when are they going to be assisted with the issue of electricity? Really, let me leave it at that, Chairperson, but this is really bad. I want to say that. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Shabalala. It's Honorable Kashalia.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions up front. One is, why is the presentation marked confidential? I'd like to understand that, because I don't understand why this is marked confidential. And if it is not confidential and the nation needs to have access and the media needs to have access to it, then it must be made plain. Secondly, I'd like to ask, perhaps we can look into how many times our minister has been present in this committee on extremely important SOEs, which are gobbling up money and are busy nosediving. I'd like to understand how often he's been and why not, or is he perhaps following the line of the Honorable Lindiwe Sisulu. Now, this presentation presents a history, presents a future future wishes, and an idea of focus. It does nothing more than that. It does not actually, beyond that, elucidate anyone and make anyone particularly wiser. Because in terms of outcomes, there is nothing that we can calibrate here. You know, in February 2020, the President's SOE Council was proclaimed. I'd like to understand what exactly they have achieved. It's our job to exercise oversight, and if they are going to be part of the problem, then we need to exercise oversight over them. There are considerable concerns from the Attorney General about Eskom and diesel. These need to be addressed forthwith, and we need answers on that, because it's always a question of how much money and where the money is coming from, in this case, to keep the lights on. In terms of Alexco, I'll jump around. There are no annual financial statements, and audit delays are cited, but there is no, and in view of this, we have no support across the board for private members bill, which calls for annual financial statements and as consequences and a timeline in place. We have dancing around it by Treasury as well. Danelle, I'm fascinated to understand where the 1.2 billion of funding is going to go to, and how is this going to be used. We don't have detail again on this. We talk about 900 million coming from already being achieved, but 890 million left over, which will come from non-core assets. Well, can we have a list of those non-core assets to understand if there's any real possibility of achieving 890 million? What are we selling there? Are we selling offices? Are we selling stocks? Are we selling planes? What are we selling? We need to understand this. In terms of this whole issue of no financial statements, we had a briefing the last time from Advocate Jenkins, and he said unequivocally that interim reports must and can be tabled, but they are not. They are never tabled. There's just excuses as to why they cannot be tabled. How do we monitor in the absence of these? That is the question. Can we please have these forthwith? In terms of, my brain works simply. I would, instead of all this long talk, I would say in terms of each entity, what are we going to do? When are we going to do it? At what cost? To what effect? And what are the milestones for achievement? And what are the consequences for non-achievement and the options open thereafter to us? Now, surely that is the way to go, instead of this mumbo jumbo that we receive. That is, I won't use the phrase that has come to mind. Eskom, the elephant in the room. Eskom represents 80% of our problems in this committee. The others are relatively minuscule by comparison. And what have we seen? We have seen an energy availability factor that has gone down. We have seen over a period of, since 2019, 160 billion pumped into this entity. The question to ask, in view of all this, and where we find ourselves. Hello? And Chair, can you please?
Acting DG. Can
So
you mute?
in terms of this huge amounts of money that is pumped into it, the energy availability factor going down, stages of load shedding going up constantly. We are teetering on the brink. If we reach that brink, does Eskom have the capacity to pull us to have if there's a blackout? Can it do a black start? Does it have the capacity to do so? That is a very pertinent question. Those are the questions we need to be monitoring and be giving detail on. We have no diesel. We're told that Eskom and the minister will be looking for money to provide these detail. Let's have details on this detail. There's no plan that we are presented with, particularly that in detail gives us these answers. SAA, the CEO resigned. If you look at the figures that SAA provides, quarter by quarter, there are losses. There is a considerable lack of transparency around the strategic equity partner and their ability to come to the party with the money that they are supposed to. Now, we need answers on this. The Attorney General has raised these questions. The minister's bypassing of Treasury and reliance on the PFMA, the Attorney General has highlighted as an area of particular concern. These are issues that need to be addressed. With Transnet, much touted rail to road, road to rail rather, can we have detailed figures on what is transpiring? Because in the absence of that, all we see is our roads being destroyed and our ports not being able to deliver what we are producing in this country. So agricultural product goes to waste and mineral product cannot be sold, which will improve the balance sheet of our country and the companies that are the country is reliant on. What plans are there in Transnet to reverse what, and let's not make any bones about this, what is effectively a loss if you take out that those clever accounting procedures which are not so clever. We need an outcomes-based evaluation, and it has to be on every level. We need to understand vis-a-vis Transnet what is happening with the TFR slot sales. What are the terms here? What are the timelines? We're just told that there are significant progress there. I'm sorry, I don't buy significant progress. I want to know exactly what's going on. Otherwise, I'm not doing my job. And I need to know tangibly what has been achieved. We talk about vandalism and theft. Well, let us understand exactly what has been achieved in this regard. I will not buy platitudes anymore. I will do everything on earth in this committee, in the House, and in the media to make sure that is addressed. It is our job to monitor and evaluate in that regard. SAA is still posting a loss. Eskom has got is in a financial mess par excellence, never mind an operational mess, and Transnet may well be the next Eskom. Alex Cord, Danell, and SAX are frankly basket cases, and I do not buy, in the absence of the detail I've asked for, any forward progress vis-a-vis Danell. Now, let me truncate this and say there are a couple of issues which I've raised here. AFS, annual financial statements, Advocate Jenkins' statement that we need interim statements and we're entitled to them. A simple list of what to do in terms of the entities, when, at what cost, to what effect, and consequences. Details on the strategic equity partners with regard to SAA and Transnet. An idea of what contingency plans there are for a blackout in the event of a blackout. in ESCOM and detailed plans. on the
Natalia?
table. Yeah, I'm finishing. Alex Core, we need to understand why that entity is not being closed. They've got no money. They cannot progress without any money. Treasury has said, we're not giving you a penny more. And what needs to be done to now compensate and going forward, put an entity in place that will give the community what they deserve and the contract and employ the contractors. I think I've made myself clear here. I'll end it there.
Yes, thank you. But honorable members, be also mindful of time. I know we're supposed to ask as much question as we can, but sometimes we must avoid the repeating questions. Honorable Maotwe, I don't see her. If Honorable Komani is on the platform, can she come? Okay. If any of them is not here, then Honorable Gumede. Honorable Gumede.
Chair, good morning to members, the departments, and all other people on the platform. Chair, I want to say my focus will be on Dinel today, but not on the negatives. Secondly, I want to declare that I'm hibernating somewhere. If you hear any noise behind me, I don't have a control of the activities that are taking place in this room where I'm hiding. But Chair, if I'm convinced, I want to say that I'm done with Dinel, and I want to be convinced that Dinel is back, is on the way, perhaps to be on the right footing. Yes, as much as there may be queries on the plan, but at least we do have a credible restructuring plan. All what we need to do is to make sure that we do monitor and see whether things that are in fact are said to have happened do happen at the right time, as we will be given perhaps the time frame. Chair, I want to say as well, we know it's something that we debated as a committee, that as long as the financial statements and the annual statements are not done, the organization or the entity is in fact still in the hollow. And I'm happy that we have been given the deadlines of all the outstanding annual reports as well as the financial reports, which it means that the department, not really the department, but Dinel in this instance, it's beginning to cleanse itself so that it gets prepared for the way ahead. Written somewhere in italics, there is something that says the 3.4, whether it's Dinel or the department, will ask for some relaxations on the conditions, that at least it be given a permission to use the money, yes, with the understanding that there are, inverted commas, conditions that have been put. If that could be the case, I'm not sure whether a little bit of a leeway would have been obtained in this instance. All what perhaps one would expect is, we would expect a kind of support, especially on strategic and critical issues, that the DPE will give to Dinel. Yes, to the department, the DPE I hope the issue of a bill will in fact come to the final stage. And the department is to relook the concern that shared by Honorable Shabalala when it comes to the boards, not necessarily the young people, but a very vibrant and strong boards that in fact will take the SOE somewhere rather than perhaps wherever it's not moving anywhere. And Chair, and the department is again to improve targets. There is a lot that one can mention on targets, but that on a whole, Chair, it's my comment for a day. I'm looking forward to Dinel coming back and do its wonderful work that is expected of it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Gumede, thank you. And now is Honorable Mkwanazi. Honorable Mkwanazi. Perhaps Honorable Mkwanazi is experiencing problem. Honorable Mkwanazi, ukhona apha kodwa. It's fine. Let's go to Honorable Isaac. Honorable Isaac.
Chairperson,
Okay.
Chairperson, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible now.
Thank you. Yeah, Chairperson, I've been mostly covered across the board by my colleague, Honorable Kachalia, in terms of having raised a full synopsis on this report, which obviously, I don't know, it just doesn't make a lot of business sense. Nevertheless, Honorable Gumede alluded to looking forward to Denel and his turnaround strategy, etc. But you know, it's difficult to comprehend because you know, with the much publicized loss of skills, including the financial challenges that is faced by the company. I mean, the question arises is that will potential clients questions Denel's ability to fulfill the defense equipment on its order book? We still need to understand and find out what steps has Denel taken to protect its current defense hardware, as well as its market share and the ability to attract new clients. But I'm in the interest of time, I'm not going to be repetitive. There's the issue of SAA, which my colleague Honorable Kachalia alluded to very clearly. The so-called shareholder is struggling to raise the funding. I'm not sure as to if that deal is ever going to take off. But I'll tell you what, Chairperson, in the interest of everybody, I'll just leave it there because I've been largely covered across the board. Thank you very much.
Okay, Honorable Isaac. The ministry, the cabinet or the executive is always a shareholder. It's not a so-called shareholder. It's a shareholder in a state-owned entity. Honorable members, let's go to Honorable Buthelezi, whom I don't see on the platform. From there, going to Honorable Dlamini.
Thanks, Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I think one must welcome the report and also voice his concern in terms of how we are able to listen to one presentation but hear different things. Nowhere did the report say SAA is making a loss. But Honorable Kachalia somehow smuggles this point as if it's a legitimate point coming from the report. Two, we seem to be making progress in some SOEs and we are stagnant in others. In as much as we don't have the financial statements from Alexco, but we are aware from our last oversight visit to the mine that things are turning around, and now we are in fact can confirm that we are making progress in that regard insofar as Alexco is concerned. And we are in fact happy to receive the news that we are making some profit there. That's good news. We are, however, going to have to confront certain things. One, looking at SAA, SAA seems to be doing well without the strategic equity partner. Now, this is going to create a problem. We must ask ourselves if the strategic equity partner really is waiting for a time when SAA is 100% profitable for them to come on board, or they don't want to be part of the process to rebuild and resuscitate SAA. If that's the case, do we still need that as a strategic equity partner? We seem to be doing fine without them. If we do need them, why do we need them? If we find a reason why we need them, why are not there now? What are they waiting for? That's one. Two, we need to also look in terms of the type of human resource we have employed in these SOEs, where we are doing well, where we are not doing well. Looking at Transnet, we seem to be battling, and I'm not too sure if I understand the plan correctly, but we seem to be gravitating more towards the private sector rescuing the situation at Transnet, when in fact the private sector is Transnet's competition in the logistics space. It's quite an anomaly to expect your competitors to rescue you, who really would want you to go under so that they benefit from that space. It's a very strange type of an arrangement that we're discussing here. Be that as it may, I'm aware that the port of Maputo is going to be expanding very soon. And it's the private sector that's going to be pumping money into that expansion. So are we following that example? Are we maybe going to see a situation where the private sector is fully in charge of Transnet? If that's the plan, how is that going to unfold? What then becomes the role of this committee insofar as that arrangement is concerned? I'm asking this because we've already been made aware that the 100 billion or so needed to expand the Port of Durban will have to come from the private sector. So it's on that, with that background that I'm posing this question, Chair. Now, if you look at SAFCOL, we are doing very well there and we are happy. But in them doing well, they are also doing well insofar as supporting small SMMEs and black business, so to speak. We don't seem to be making progress at Transnet in that regard. Even when Transnet advertises, puts out an advert for RFQs with an element of black business participation, it doesn't really amount to anything, because if we were to get a breakdown of the people that are participating at Transnet in terms of business, you will have no significant representation of black business in that space. And we must also then begin to ask ourselves, why is that? Because transformation is a critical part of their mandate as well. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Dlamini. Honorable Piri. Honorable Piri. Seemingly no Honorable Piri. Honorable Mkwanazi. Honorable Mkwanazi. Okay. Let's go to the last person. Honorable Malinga.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Greetings to yourself, members of the Portfolio Committee, and everybody on the call. Chair, I hope I am audible.
Yes.
Am I, Chair?
Yes, you are. Loud and
Okay.
clear.
All right. Thank you so much, Chairperson. Let me welcome the presentation as given by the acting DG and raise a few issues, Chair, that are really troublesome to myself. Chairperson, I welcome the issue that SAFCOL is the most solvent of all the entities in the DPE stable. But Chairperson, the issue of land claims that is still not attended to is really a pain. And I would like to implore the acting DG to speedily speak to their counterparts, the ADLA, who assist with this task of land claims so that there's no dark cloud on the good work that SAFCOL is doing. Moving on, Chair, to Denel. In the process of stabilizing Denel, how does the department plan to get the skills that left Denel with the copyrights or the designs that they left with from Denel to AE? How do they plan to do that, Chairperson, so that to ensure that this 3.9 that we're also giving to Denel to stabilize it, it does not go to the drain? Chairperson, the issue of Transnet, we've been singing this song. It's boring. Actually, we sound like a broken record now. Moving goods from road to rail. But with the current state of our ports, that is not possible. Also, Chairperson, I thought she will dwell on the issue of the locomotives. I'm not sure whether I missed some pieces where that point was clarified, where we found out that when we went on oversight, Transnet Cape Town, we were told by an engineer that the locomotives that were sent to South Africa did not meet the specs. It's either they were big or they were small. Whether the department has resolved that issue and was money recouped on the defaults that were done by the service provider, Chair. I'm saying, Chairperson, maybe I might have missed that portfolio committee when that was explained. Chairperson, as much as Alexco is also stabilizing, but it will be very nice to have their financials so that we see that they are really indeed in the right track. And we welcome the pronouncement by the DG that they are going to keep an eye that as they are stabilizing, they don't find themselves being solvent again. Chairperson, let me move to the issue that the acting DG also picked up or outlined in her presentation, the issue of failure to adhere to SCM policies. I did not hear her mentioning any consequence management on the people who are failing to adhere, because SCM is a policy. You have to follow processes when you deal with the public purse. Why are the people who are faltering on the SCM not taken to task? I welcome the issue that she says that they are going to put SCM as part of the performance indicator for the SOCs, but I would also like her to also put that for the managers in the department, because we, with the ailing fiscus chair, we are in 5 years, South Africa has borrowed more than 1.5 trillion to bail out SOCs. We can't afford this as the country. The economy cannot afford this, Chairperson. Maybe if that could also be put as a performance indicator for the managers also in the department. Lastly, Chairperson, I want to speak to the elephant in the room, ESCOM. You know, Chairperson, the issue that ESCOM operations are not working and all that. We have a COO there. I've never had the department saying that we have called the COO, we have temporarily suspended the COO because he's failing to do his job. How do employees put, the last time we said when there was load shedding, they said the generators broke because a low quality coal or coal that was mixed with gravel was put in the generator. Ganti, where are the quality assurers in ESCOM? And I'm told, Chairperson, with the very same person who's supposed to do quality assurance at ESCOM is also a contract. I'm not sure how far true is that, Chairperson. That means yes, Liswana at the expense of the state, at the expense of the poor people who extremely need electricity in the country. Small businesses are dying. The economy is not growing because ESCOM cannot keep the lights on in the country. The COO gets to take his fat salary home. The CEO gets to take his fat salary home, but they are not doing the job. Then you get the board members who always are anti-ANC policies. There was another one who went on to rant about the economic policy. Where do you find such people who don't respect the policies of the governing party? You will respect the policies of the other governing party when they win elections in 2024. Chairperson, if maybe ESCOM, they can learn a thing or two from Sasol. Sasol, they have been there for a very long time themselves. But you won't hear that we cannot send gas, you cannot send what, because our operations, our generator, and what is broken. Why are they not copying something that might work even for them? And the Chairperson, when ESCOM decided to have coal-fired plants, you had coal-fired plants with the specification of a generator in that coal-fired plant. So you know what type of coal that goes into that generator to generate electricity. So how come they don't know this? And how come they break the generators all the time? Now we are seized with questions that we cannot answer. Is ESCOM going? And I'm sorry, I heard Honorable Chabalala saying that we gave them 28-point-something billion, and 21 billion of that goes to ESCOM. ESCOM that is not even giving us anything in return. Is that wise? Is that a good financial or accounting from the department, from the side of the department? Because until we can change boards until we are greater. If we can't get the CEO whose intentions are clear on getting ESCOM to be working, we cannot come here every day, we lament about old power stations, all this and this, Zondo Commission corruption. Zondo is not a court of law. You cannot be saying one and the same song every day. So if maybe, Chairperson, I could be clarified on, because I don't get the plan to get ESCOM working. I don't get the plan. We need to have a plan. Let the plan be tabled before this portfolio to say, hey, we're thinking. I don't know if there are engineers in the department, if there are people who understand what needs to be done at ESCOM, or what needs to be done on all these ailing entities, if we do have such skills. We might be talking about SOCs that do not have skills. We might as well be sitting with people who are not even skilled to oversee those SOCs. So how are we going to get them going, Chairperson? Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Malinga. Honorable members, that is the end of questions. Let me take this opportunity to call again the department as led by the acting DG.
Chairperson? Okay. Sorry about that comment, Makaka. I just have one, it's a line. I won't take long. I didn't want to come for follow-up, so I just want them to respond to this part that the department should tell us on SAFCO, really, are they assisting the entity in securing the funding for the Timber Dollar sawmill? If we can understand the investment in the sawmill, will we see a positive impact on the entity's performance and long-term sustainability? But also to say that I hope the department really is assisting SAFCO. It's not going to give SAFCO to private sector. And what are the plans that they have with SAFCO in terms of SAFCO's growth strategy? If SAFCO really is communicating with its own policy sister departments before they really end up privatizing. Thank you.
Okay. The acting
Chair, sorry, Chair.
Oh gosh. Who's that now?
It's Zamin.
Lamini?
Yes, before the acting DG responds, I think the one thing that I must raise quickly on ESCOM, it doesn't make sense, Chair, to be told that some of the coal that's being exported is from ESCOM and that some of the coal they receive has rocks in them. Who in terms of the whole supply chain process, and there must be a process that says when they deliver stock, someone must see to it that it's the right quantity, the right quality, and the volumes. But does that happen at ESCOM? If that happens, how then does ESCOM not pick up that there's rocks and coal is being stolen? There's a problem within the system at ESCOM. Can we be addressed on that, Chair? Thanks.
Okay. I think that's clear. Ms. Acting DG.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the honorable members. I just want to probably assure the honorable member that I'm just trying to paint the picture as is and not to sugarcoat it in any way, shape, or form. I just wanted to start with the issue. I'm going to try and respond to all the questions, Chair, if that's okay. And those that I leave out, then I will probably respond to them through written if I do run out of time. On the issue of the transformation agenda, I just need to indicate to and assure the committee here that transformation agenda is definitely one of the key areas that the department is closely monitoring. In fact, there is a unit, business enhancement, that looks exactly at this particular area because of the very fact that our SOCs, the mandate is both dual, it's both commercial and developmental. And by developmental, we are in fact looking at those issues of transformation, be it BE, youth, small business, and also more, as like I indicated, the issue of local content, all those issues, we are monitoring them. And we don't just want desktop reports, but you want information that is verified, that is evidence-based, as opposed to us being told. So we do take this particular area seriously, and there is a whole unit that is doing that. But over and above the internal people in the department who are seized with this task, we are also getting external people to then verify and be on the ground and interact and verify that, in fact, those transformational targets, which are in fact even in the shoulder compacts, are really there and are measurable, and we're able to really report on to the committees and whoever requires this information. I think on the issue as well around the issue of the shareholder management bill, I just need to, I know that the Honorable Member Shabalala indicated this even in the last portfolio committee meeting, to say they've heard this thing so many times. Will it really see the light of day? Are we really confident? I have been even actively engaging with the unit, the legal unit. They are currently in consultation on the draft with the different stakeholders to make sure that we have committed ourselves to say in the next quarter, we want this bill to be finalized. It is there, it is drafted. They are now going through the consultations. This is what is happening right now as we speak. So we do not want to be found wanting on this particular area. It is a very important KPA. And I think I understand and appreciate probably the anxiety or even the reluctance or even the doubt that could have been associated as to whether this will definitely see the light of day. But I am pressing the team to make sure, because there already is a document that they are consulting with that will be before this particular committee to be passed, to make sure that it gets through, because it is important that we get it through. On the issue of Alex Core, I think, and even the other entities, I really need to emphasize the point that it will be very difficult for us to complete any financial statements if entities are not a going concern. So because of liquidity challenges. So for example, in Denel, now that we now have the money, that is why the auditors are now hard at work to making sure that the AFS, they're going to be starting with the work of auditing those numbers, because now there is sight of where the money is going to come from, and where, in terms of them taking the going concern, they've got to make sure that there's going to be money. It meets the test that that entity is going to be liquid for the next 12 months. So if there is no money, it becomes very, very difficult in that regard. So that is why there's been this particular challenge. On the issue of the big issue that the Honorable Member Shabalala raised, which is, she said, it's the load shedding, the 155 days. Yes, the department is working, and we understand the impact that this has. I mean, we are very much alive to the fact that load shedding is definitely having an adverse impact on the economy and also on the livelihoods of people and businesses, and we do not want that. And I can assure you that we are currently have been working very hard to make sure that we do not want the higher stages of load shedding. We need to avert it at all times. When we all saw on Sunday that the ESCOM was now at stage 4 load shedding. I'm sure the honorable members are here on the call. They must have seen a statement that was issued by the department to say that we note that stage 4 is really happening. Minister convened a meeting with the board of ESCOM and ensured that we begin to deal with this issue henceforth without any delay. And with that intervention, and got the technical team to start cracking, and that work is still continuing. And as I speak to you today, we have been working flat out to ensure that stage 4 does not become the order of the day, because we do understand what this means, the impact thereof is. And as we speak today, in fact, we are now at stage 2. But, you know, this is what I just want to indicate, that as the department and the minister as well, we are, I can assure you, we just not just sitting back and just watching and sitting idle and just letting this slide deeper. We want a resolution to this issue as soon as possible, and we are working on making sure that the necessary stability, whether it be diesel money, but we also need to look at long-term sustainable solutions. Yes, we can look at this particular area, but we need to be, we must have a coordinated plan and strategy that is comprehensive. It should just not be doing a drip feed, but it must be a comprehensive and sustainable strategy to make sure that we alleviate this, because it does impact the planning, and also even does not bode well for the economy going forward. So I just want to probably give that context to the honorable members, and also to the chair, in terms of the issue that is serious and is quite important on ESCOM. And on the issue of they raised the issue of the debt, as to the question is, why should we keep on giving money to ESCOM? The reality is, this entity, it has raised money using government guarantees, and it needs to pay for those. And if we do not pay for those, that will have it will default, and you don't want that. And that is why it is important that even investors going out there, and when they lend to this entity, they should know that they will get their money back. So we cannot be saying that we should not be giving money. They need to honor their debt obligations in that regard. So in terms of that, this money is basically going to service the historic debt obligations, because as we know that the debt issue is quite significant in terms of capital and interest that they need to pay. And if they don't, it will have an adverse impact, not only for ESCOM, but also it will increase the cost of borrowing, not only for the entity, but also for the sovereign, which will then have an impact on the economy as a whole. So we need to look at it from that particular perspective. In terms of the roadmap that the DPE published around the distribution, transmission, and generation, we do know that in terms of the transmission, that work has actually happened, and now we're going to be looking at distribution and also distribution and also generation business. We did indicate that in the transmission business, we're now wanting to have it as a subsidiary, and even the boards of those subsidiaries have also been identified, and we're beginning now to operationalize that. And the reason being that we really want to have clear line of sight to see what is happening in those operations, because when you really bulk it as a whole, it becomes very difficult when you look at it from a consolidated or from a holding perspective, so that we can really begin to see the line items and get to understand the different businesses as to what the issues are. So that work is really ongoing. We have received the PFM applications for the distribution and the generation businesses, and those have been are being attended to. So that's where we are. We are assessing it, and as soon as that is being done, that information will be communicated to the public, and including yourselves, this committee of public enterprises, so that you know what is really happening and provide the necessary update that is needed. I just need to probably Honorable Kachalia, apologies for that point in terms of the presentation. We said confidential. Well, I suppose it was not supposed to be there. So we do take note of that. On the issue of indicating that the entity is gobbling money, and what it is that we're using this money for, and what has happened around Transnet. I think we all need to be, the reality is that everybody else thought COVID was going to be for a short period. However, it became protected, and nobody saw that coming. And with the best forecast and with the best analysis or forward-looking, no one could have actually envisaged a situation of COVID lasting as long as it was. And secondly, no one also anticipated the impact that the floods actually had on that we saw, and also even damaging some of the infrastructure at in KZN. And the team had to work very hard to make sure that they clear the rubble and make sure that they restore the operations in that area. So some of these issues, I think people might think that probably it, one is quote unquote, there are probably excuses, but it is a fact, it happened. And how, and they do have an impact on the operations, and they have an impact on the revenue and the performance of the entities. If the floods are there is no way that there'll be any operations. They need to be cleared. Buildings were decimated, the tracks were damaged, etc. And those, they need to be cleared. And it's a whole process to actually deal with those issues. So this is what really happened. And without being defensive, but this what actually warranted even the National Treasury being alive to that fact, and as a result, extending the amount of support that was required for Transnet. If all things being equal, I think they probably would not have been in this particular position that they were, because we saw before then, I mean, they've actually worked very hard to make sure that the challenges that they've had, they deal with them, and they delivered. And I'm not going to question in terms of the profits. The auditors indicated that they reported a profit and that those numbers were audited. So it is factual, and they worked against very challenging times, and we really have to commend the team. And it's also against the backdrop of what has actually happened, even in this environment where we are also building at the same time, we're also cleaning up. Whether we like it or not, the reality is we are still having those challenges of the past. We can bury our heads in the sand and believe that they never happened, but in fact they did happen, and they're having an impact on these SOCs in terms of their operations and their financial performance. And that is why it is so important that even the work that was done around what we've seen in the commission around the procurement, etc., it really set these entities, you know, on a back foot. But notwithstanding that, we really have to push forward, put our shoulders to the wheel, and move forward and turn these entities forward. The same way it's happening at Denel. We have had those challenges, and now they're turning the corner. We are beginning to see the green shoots. Yes, the entity also, it was not audited in those past financial years, but now with the money coming through, that is why in the past, when people know and there was no sign or signal that these entities will be they're going to be capitalized by the state, which is 100% a shareholder. When people don't know whether they're going to get their salary, they will look for opportunities elsewhere because they don't know where the salaries are coming from. But now that there has been money that is being earmarked, allocated, and they know there is certainty that that money will be coming through, then one as an entity can confidently go out there and get those resources that left because they were not sure. But now there is clarity and there's clear line of sight as to what is going to happen even around Denel. There's a plan that is there that needs to be executed, and you can then confidently go and approach those people who left, who have the requisite skills, experience, and capacity to execute on the order book that Denel actually has at hand. On the issue of the non-core assets, like I indicated to the honorable members and chair and colleagues, we are one of the conditions that was also attached is that there has to be the disposal of non-core assets, because also the Treasury has to be convinced that they are just not going to be putting all the money into these entities, but they also need to demonstrate that they're going to reduce the ask, because there are various competing priorities that they need to be seized with. We've got limited resources, but the wants are many. So, you know, they've also needed to demonstrate on their side as to what it is that they're going to be doing. So one of that's why they put some of those conditions. We have engaged even with Treasury, even ourselves, and shared even those conditions and post conditions in terms of what they're indicating, to make sure that that does not become a hindrance, to make sure that in fact this Terron plan that Denel so well developed and currently implemented, it does see the light of day. And we do not want to put probably conditions that would probably be a hindrance or an obstacle towards attaining exactly that which we want to turn these entities around. So we have to make sure that they're fit for purpose, and they will be an enabler rather than a hindrance to that effect. And that is why even the Section 54 applications that are being sent to DPE and National Treasury to begin to show that we are on track to making sure that the disposal of these assets is actually happening. And I need to underscore, it is non-core assets, because you cannot be selling your own assets, because it will undermine the very instruments that will enable you to generate the required revenue, because the submission was that we would need this amount of money to be able to turn these entities around, so that the revenue is sufficient, so that these entities that can stand on their own, they don't become a drain on the fiscus, and that is clearly communicated. And then to make sure that in fact that is the case, And we need to, as the department, to make sure that we monitor the implementation and the milestones associated with that plan, that they're executed properly, and that there is no slippage of time, money, or even or in terms of plans in that regard. So we are working, and that is exactly what we are doing. And as well as also trying to engage with even other entities to open revenue generating opportunities or business opportunities to make sure that these entities becomes financially viable and sustainable. And the other question that was asked, yeah, I'm just going to try and quickly, because I see that I'm taking quite a lot of time in terms of responding to these. I think the other question, it was asked by the Honorable Dlamini to say, for example, even around the SAA, what the SCP, why they're not coming through, are they waiting for the entity to be profitable for them to come in? And when I think I just need to probably remind the colleagues to say that the SCP will only come after those approvals have been obtained, because now you cannot come in, because it's more like, on what basis are you coming in? Because there's no transfer of ownership or shares that has actually materialized. So until those have been finalized and there's been a transfer of shares and ownership, that is when they can come in. But on now, there is no locus standi for them to come in, or basis upon which they can stand. And that is why we are imploding on, well, we'd like this transaction to be finalized sooner rather than later, to make sure that they can come legally, and then there can be that transfer of ownership and shares for them to come on board. And I need to indicate that even the previous obligations, these are historical obligations. They would lead to honor, because they've made those obligations. They need to pay for them. So it is not the new investor that's coming in that is going to take legacy debts. Those are historical debts that needs to be honored, and is also a legal obligation that one needs to honor. So in that regard, unfortunately, we cannot run away from that, but it is one that needs to be borne by the state. And in fact, when we engaged with many of the funders, that was a prerequisite to say, historical issues, those needs to be dealt with in that regard. So that is the one issue that I need to indicate, that we all want it to happen. And when they're there, then they will assist to get the entity to actually have even more roots, and also provide the necessary funding that is really required to make the entity profitable going forward. On the issue of the honorable member also asked the strong boards, the young boards. I think there is a metrics that we all use in terms of appointing boards. There's a methodology of boards, and I think it's been shared with this committee, that we look at age, gender, skills, competence, experience, youth, etc. There's a whole metrics that we do look at, but I do take the point that you are indicating, but there is a methodology that we follow in terms of getting the people on board, and our governance team is actually doing that work using that prescribed methodology of appointing of the boards. On the issue of just as many as I can, because of the time constraints. I think the honorable member actually indicated that, for example, with Transnet, what is required is about 100 billion that is required around the Port of Durban that is needed. The reality is that the revenues are not there. Like I indicated, that there has been those challenges around the COVID and also the issue of the floods, and the balance sheet is just not there. And we need to crowd in the private sector. But the way we want the private sector to come in, it is not for them to cherry pick. We want to make sure that it's a win-win solution, and that those non-negotiables that we also want, not to probably elbow them out, but we do need the financial and operational expertise to augment that, but we do negotiate around that. It is not like probably, we just selling for the sake of selling. Unfortunately, we are having constrained balance sheets, and we cannot always run to the fiscus for money. We need to be prudent and efficient how we run our operations, and making sure that they are operational and they're functional, they're efficient, and they contribute to the economic recovery of this country, and they contribute as well to the development objective of the country as espoused in the ERRP. So those are the critical areas. And also, I think there are some, the question is, how do we plan, and what it is that we're showing? We are making those examples, as we indicated. For example, SAFCO, it is definitely one of the blueprint that one would want many of the SOCs to be. And we also want them to give probably some dividend back to the state, so that we can begin to demonstrate that these entities can in fact be managed very, very well, fulfilling both their commercial and developmental objectives, and also giving the shareholder and the fiscal some money in terms of giving that. And I think there was a question that was asked as to what is going to happen in terms of those going forward. I think it was raised by Honorable Shabalala, but I think that work also, it will be informed by the PSEC Presidential SOC Council that is looking at the work on the number of SOCs in government overall, in terms of which SOCs should be merged, which one should be consolidated, and which one should be disposed of. And once that work, I'm sure, has been finalized, it will be shared with the presidency is leading that work, and the colleagues here will then have line of sight as to what the thinking is around the respective SOCs. Chair, the other questions that we were asked around the question on the issue of the coal that was asked by the honorable member in terms of the quality assurance, what is happening there. The challenge that we have had with ideally, as the members would appreciate, is that many of these power stations, we wanted them to be close to the power station so that the coal can be transported through the conveyor belt. But as we know that there was a break, the conveyor belt actually broke, and that's now for you to transport the coal, it needs to go through by trucks. And in terms of these particular trucks, yes, Eskom does have the labs in terms of the quality of coal that they want, but those they get tampered with, and people actually load them. I mean, in a day, you find that there are so many trucks. We've seen on social media groups and stuff in terms of what happens. But these people, what they tend to do, that they're quite put the coal that you want at the top, and then they put the coal at the bottom. So it is quite a number of trucks, and there are quite a number of them. And it's what we're actually talking about in terms of looking at the whole of state, and also getting the law enforcement agencies to make sure that the kind of quality coals that is there, you find that they end up actually now doing more the policing, as opposed to focusing on ensuring that they actually run these power stations efficiently and optimally around those areas. So we have to make sure that we limit, we actually want less tampering of the coal quality, because it does lead to breakages and breakdowns of these power stations. But that will actually need enhanced security measures internally and externally to make sure that they don't compromise energy of security supply. I'm just trying to summarize many of them, because there are quite a number of questions, Chair and honorable members, that probably the ones that I have probably left out, can I respectfully request that I respond in writing, because given the number of questions that the honorable members raised and asked, there are just so many that I don't think I will do justice to respond to them quite in sufficient detail that they require, given the time constraints that we want. But I can be guided by you, and I'm at your disposal, Chair, for you to guide me as to how I should deal with it. Can I hand over to you, Chair and honorable members?
Oh, okay. I get you. Honorable members, if there, I think we must do as we normally do. If there are any questions that even the acting DG is not covered, those members will just get those answers in writing, and then we'll be able to get them as we normally do. But I think she is correct. She has tried to cover questions substantially. I think now we need to go to the second matter and close this one. I'm not sure if the honorable members are comfortable with that.
Agreed, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Honorable members, that's the response from the department by the acting Director General. For now, we have to take this opportunity to thank the department for being able to assist with the presentation and respond to our questions. If there is anyone who is not comfortable with questions, with the manner in which the question has been tackled, that particular honorable member can still write to the department, while the department has to go through the list and do what they normally do, write those questions and all that, those responses. Send it to the Secretary of the Portfolio Committee, Utisang. Yeah, thank you so much. We can release you, acting DG, with your team.
Once again, thank you, Chair. Thank you, honorable members, for the opportunity, and thank you very much. Thank you, much appreciated.
Thank you. Honorable members, having spoken to the Secretary, we felt that let's take the minute to the next meeting of the previous session to the next meeting. We will be presenting both these minutes and the minutes of last week to the next session. For now, if honorables are comfortable, I would love to close this meeting and adjourn Is it acceptable, honorable members?
Agree, Chair. Long live.
Thank you. Go well. The meeting is adjourned.